Hey everybody, I'm not filming myself, just looking natural. Don't look at the camera. Street photography. Is that too far back? I've come to this very autumnal spot to tackle a very important subject, the 50mm focal length. I've never really considered myself a 50mm street photographer, however, I've actually always owned a 50mm lens in some format. I've done for nearly 20 years now. I've never made a video about it. Well, at least I don't think I have. I've recently been using and really enjoying the Fuji 35mm f2, which is a 50mm equivalent lens for the Fuji system. I picked it up with pretty low expectations and it's never left my camera bag. It's very sharp, very fast to focus, reasonably priced, really small, smaller than the 23mm f2. And I've been loving using this lens over the last year or so for taking portraits of strangers, taking more kind of slower pace photography around my local area. And it got me thinking about how I think every street photographer should have a 50mm lens in some form. They're very cheap prime lenses. They often have a very pleasing depth of field. Street photographers over the years have often reached for a 50mm. You know, you have Henri Cartier-Bresson, Robert Frank, Elliot Erwitt, and then photographers who use the Rolleiflex like Diane Arbus and Vivian Maier. Though that was an 80mm lens on the Rolleiflex, I think it was 50mm or thereabouts. So, I mean, it's just been a staple for street photography. So today's video, instead of me just rambling on, I thought I would actually talk to a few photographers who use 50mm regularly and ask them why they enjoy it. So I reached out to a few members of the Framelines community who love 50mm lenses, and I asked them for a little quote. And I thought I'd show some of their favourite 50mm street photos as well. So let's have a quick look at those. Well, have a quick listen to me voicing them over and trying to do them justice. So Mark at hasler.art says, personally, I like to isolate subjects more in my photography, but the 50mm still gives you a little more context in the background than an 85 or a 90mm, which I also enjoy using. You really can zoom with your feet using a 50mm. You can always seem to back up that little bit more to get more in the frame. And I'm not really a fan of getting right up in people's faces. Thank you, Mark. Seb at seb.ketley says, I've been pretty much using nothing but the 35mm f2, so 50mm equivalent, for over a year now. For me, I think it strikes a nice balance of being a grab-and-go lens for most situations. Can work nicely for street photography and street/environmental portraiture, but I've also used it to shoot weddings and more intimate portraits, where I get a bit closer to the subject. Sure, there are situations where I wish I had more room to breathe or more reach, like I do with my other favourite, the 90mm f2. But as someone who just likes to sling a camera around my neck when I go out, whenever and wherever, I think the 35mm is a perfect middle ground for the kind of photography I enjoy, which I realise is a lengthy way of saying, I just like it because it works for me. Nice one, Seb. So Zach at ZWS Photo says, 50mm is my go-to and has been for over a decade. These days I shoot micro 4/3, so it's 25mm on that, but the same idea. Early on, someone told me the 50mm was nearly what the human eye sees, and I found that to be mostly true, especially on a full-frame sensor. It was the only focal length I had when I first got my Olympus, so I had a lot of time with it then, but even as I added other lenses, the 50mm still feels the most comfortable for shooting street, travel, everyday life. Usable for portraits, close enough that you don't have to get too close, but can still capture a wider scene in open areas. It is the sweet spot. Love that. Nice one, Zach. Luke at Kickstand says, for me, 50mm feels the most natural to what my eyes focus on when viewing a scene. For portraits, I prefer the extra context you get around the subject versus an 85mm while maintaining the shallow depth of field. And for street, it's simply about excluding the clutter while still being wide enough to frame an interesting scene if I stood back. I've heard some people call it the most boring lens, but I feel like this comes back to a time when everyone got their first SLR. As phones have been around the 28mm range for years now, and a lot of street photographers use 35mm, I feel like 50mm actually stands out a bit nowadays. And I like the fact it makes my shots look similar to the classic masters you mentioned, like Bresson, Frank, Erwitt, etc., back when this focal length was the standard. Love that, thank you, Luke. So Gennaro, at a taker of faces, I got a nifty 50 when I bought a second-hand Sony a7 III. With the 50mm, I feel like everything is just a step away. One step closer, you get a nice portrait. One step away, you can compose a story with more context. The lenses are usually cheaper, mine is super lightweight, and the image quality is great for the price. Nothing negative to say about the 50. I find it easier to use than a 35mm. Very nicely put there, Gennaro. Sounds like you're a sort of marketing expert on the 50mm. Love it, thank you. And thank you to everybody else from the community for all their quotes on the 50mm. Really interesting and really cool to see everyone's perspective on it. I was also recently at the King's Cross Classic Car Boot sale. Took just this lens with me and asked a few strangers for portraits, and it was super fun. Really happy with the results from this lens. And while I was there, bumped into my old friend Clem, who I used to go out and take street photos with. We used to run photo walks back in 2017, 2018. They were pretty chaotic, but I know Clem loves a 50mm, so I thought I'd corner him and ask him about why he enjoys it so much as well.
I love the fact that it's kind of near your normal eyesight. So when you shoot with a 50, it's kind of you're seeing with your true eye, as opposed to like also by a lens. I like the fact that also you can get in a bit closer if you wanted to. So usually I shoot mostly with a kind of 85, but I prefer the 50 because it gives you the option to go in a bit closer, but then also kind of see it from a different angle in terms of how you would normally see it with your natural eye. So I kind of like the variation of having the 50.
If you had to stick to one, would you say 50 is the one for you?
Actually, yeah, because if I wanted a sort of tighter, most of my images are quite tight cropped. So if I wanted a tighter crop, I just crop the bits I don't want from it. So I quite and also I find I shoot a lot faster and I'm more agile with a 50. With a 50, I just go in and just shoot away. And yeah, I quite like the results I get with it.
You've got an 85 on you now. Do you not find that depth of field is like a bit extreme sometimes?
It is, but kind of for the occasion I'm shooting today, I wanted something that's really narrow, that I can just kind of focus on what I want to focus in, cut out the noise. So that's why I've gone for this. Otherwise, I would be shooting with a 50.
On your Sony?
Yeah.
Is it the 55 you've got?
It's the 55
Such
size.
a good lens.
It's a brilliant lens. Absolutely brilliant.
That's like...
And it's so lightweight as well. You can just literally pick it up and it just feels so natural. Like when I just lift the camera up, like I'm not even got like, I mean, this is quite heavy, so it's quite weighty. If you're traveling, so sometimes I do a bit of traveling and I'm limited in terms of what I can take with me. So I just usually get the 50 because I get that range that I probably wouldn't get with this. So yeah.
Amazing.
It's a great travel lens as well.
Thank you, Clem.
It's all right.
So to round off this video, I thought I'd actually go out and take some pictures with the Fuji 35mm f2. And I actually came back to the same spot that I filmed the intro at, on the top of Richmond Hill, but on the next day of the week because the forecast was for sun all day. And it was a beautiful day. Nice to get out with the 50mm or the 35mm f2. You know what I mean. Take a few pictures, have a wander around. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and also maybe drop a comment below if you also enjoy using the 50mm focal length. If you'd like to join the Framelines community, head to the link in the description. We have a private Discord and we have monthly street assignments. And I've made a lot of friends through it as well. It's just really cool.